Okay, here we go for part 2 of quadratic formula. We're on day 7 here with of e-learning. So let's get right to it here. So here we're going to have at the end of a quadratic formula question, sometimes you're going to have a perfect square underneath the radical. That's what we had on our work from the other day. Today we're going to have, it's going to be a little bit different. Today we're going to have the square root of a non-perfect square. So we've got to simplify that. So right now, there's nothing we could do with this other than simplify the radical. So I'm going to split this up into radical 4 times 2. And then from there, I'm going to split that up and take this 4 into 2 times 2 times 2. All right, so this is the whole reason we did simplifying radicals back, actually at the start of e-learning. So we're looking for matches. It's been a while since we did this, so that's why I wanted to review one of these. So I've got a pair of 2's. So remember, any radical times itself is going to just turn into that number. This one is left over. There's no match for that one, so it stays as radical 2. Okay, so we're going to simplify that, and we get 8 plus and minus 2 radical 2. That whole thing over 10. Now, if you were to stop here, you're really close, but this is not the final answer because everything's not simplified just yet. So we want to look at these numbers. Now the radical 2 is going to stay as it is, but if these can be simplified in any way at all, or if they have a common factor, we need to simplify them. So our final answer on this would actually be, because 2, we've done a lot with factoring, 2 goes into all the others. So 2 into 8 we get 4, plus and minus. 2 into 2 we get 1 radical 2. So we can put the 1 there, but we don't have to. And then 2 into 10 we get 5. So there we go. Okay, so that would be our final answer. That would be the correct answer. This one is really close, but this is the best possible answer we could have. Okay, so we're going to have to do this part at the very end, just like I showed you on the notes from day 6. All right, so there you go. There's number 1. Feel free to pause at any spot on these. I'm going to keep going pretty quick. The last one got a little bit lengthy. I just want to make this one a little bit shorter, hopefully. But like I said, you can pause at any spot just so you can write things down or get caught up. Here we go. X squared plus 8x minus 1 equals 0. All right, so this one looks like we could factor this, but if we go for factors of -1 that combine to 8, there's no way we could do that. However, so then sometimes students think it should be no real solution. Well, not necessarily. We can have a solution. It just means under the square root, we're going to get something that's not a perfect square. All right, so here we go. Here's A, B, and C. Keep in mind, if there's nothing out front of something, that is going to be a 1. All right? So here we go. X equals opposite of B, so -8 plus and minus. B squared is 8 squared minus 4. All right, A times C, you can put 1 times -1, but we know that's just -1. Whole thing over 2 times A, which is 1 this time. Okay, so that is getting it all set up. Hopefully all that makes sense. Now we're going to simplify. So once you get it set up, it's really just a matter of multiplying, simplifying. Okay, be very careful with the signs. You don't want to get those mixed up. That's where a lot of times students make their mistake. So right here, we get 64 plus 4. That is over 2. So now we've got -8 plus and minus the square root of 68 over 2. Now sometimes we might be done and we could circle that answer. However, 68, if I bring that over here, I can break that up because 2 goes into it. So I've got radical 2 times 34. Okay, and what I got to do is look for matches. If that was the best we could do, we would just leave it as this. However, 34 also has 2 times 17. So we end up with a match of 2's. So really this is going to equal -8 plus and minus 2 radical 17 over 2. Okay? So, and sometimes again we might be done there, but however on this one, we still have these which we can simplify. Okay, so finally our answer ends up 2, we'll actually go into both of them, and then we end up over 1. So 2 into the 8 we get -4 plus and minus. 2 into 2 is 1, So you can put a 1, that's fine. Radical 17 over 2 into 2 is 1. So you really don't have to write that one. You could just leave it as this. -4 plus and minus radical 17. Okay? So this actually example, this is done with quadratic formula, but could we do this with complete the square? This would actually, you could move that over and do b, take half and square it and go the complete the square route. That would also work. You'd still get the same answer either way. Okay, all right, so there's number 2. For number 3, we're going to do another quadratic formula here. So let's keep moving here with this. So number 3, we got 5x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. So I always go through and label right away A, B, and C. So when there's nothing there, that's really a 1. So here we go. X equals opposite of B, so a positive 1. Remember, opposite of B just means negative B. So negative negative is why this is a positive from up there. Plus the square root of b squared minus 4. A times c this time, 5 times -2 is -10. So I'm going to write that. Okay? Over 2 times a, which is 5. All right, so here's our setup. That part, if we can get everything set up correctly with correct signs, now we're really just multiplying and simplifying. The radical can be difficult. That's why we practiced it early on in the chapter. So we got positive 1 plus and minus the square root. We got 1 negative times negative is a positive 40 over 10. Now this time we end up getting 1 plus and minus the square root of 41 over 10. Now 41, we go to try to simplify that. 41 is actually prime. So even though this looks like it might be more difficult, this is it. We can leave our answer like that. We get a stop. So honestly, this is actually shorter when it happens this way than when you get a perfect square. Okay? So there you go. There's number 3. That does happen sometimes. Okay. Let's go ahead on to number 4. And number 4 this time, 12x squared plus 7x. We have plus 3 equals 0. Remember, if it's not equal to 0, if there's anything over here that you need to move it over, okay, this is number 4. So that we have A, B, and C. A, B, and C have to be on the same side. They can't be where 3 is over there. You would have to move it over before you could start. So here we go. Opposite of B is -7, plus and minus. Okay, 7 squared minus 4. All right, A times C this time is a little bit more difficult, so I'm just going to write it all out. You can put 36 if you want, but sometimes when you get bigger numbers, students would rather write it out there, and that's totally fine. Over 2 times A, which is 12. All right, so we get going with this. We're going to have -7 plus and minus the square root. 7 squared is 49. So use your calculator for this. You don't have to do this in your head. We get 3 times 12 is 36. 36 times 4, we get a -144 over 24. So you might notice or recognize, hopefully from the other day's work, day 6's work, what happens when we get a square root underneath the radical? Well, what happens is we get no solution, or no real solution. So -7 plus and minus, we get a square root of a negative. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter now because it's going to be no real solution. NRS. What would that be? -96, I believe. So, oh, -95. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. But anyhow, it doesn't matter what the negative number is there. As long, for what we're doing, it's going to be no real solution. And there you go. Okay, so that is number 4. No real solution when you get a negative underneath there. Doesn't happen all the time, but something to be aware of. There went my pen cap. All right, last one. We're doing okay on time, not quite as long as the last time. Keep things going. 9x squared minus x equals 3. So I mentioned this earlier. This is not A, B, and C. Technically, this is A, and this is really a 1. This would be B, but this is not C. We got to move it over before we can do that. So we subtract 3 to do that. So we get 9x squared minus 1x minus 3 equals 0. All right. And we've got A, B, and C. So x equals, opposite of b is positive 1 plus and minus square root of b squared. Okay, b is going to be negative 1 minus 4a times c this time is going to be, I'll put 9 times a negative 3 there. The whole thing over 2 times a, which is 9. Okay, so we've got this. I'm going to simplify it over here, try to save space. We get 1 plus and minus the square root. Negative 1, squared. Negative 1 squared is going to be a positive 1. Now, negative times negative is a positive. So I believe we're going to get plus 108 over here. The whole thing over 2 times a, which is 18. All right, so we get 108. Now what happens on this one, we end up with x equals 1 plus and minus the square root of 109 over 18. And so again, we want to check, can we simplify this? So if you check 109, it actually is prime. So this is it. So when this happens, it makes things a little shorter, makes it a little bit easier, and you get a stop right there. So be careful when you're entering on Canvas. I'm going to figure out how exactly I'm going to do that as I'm doing this film, or recording this before I make up the quiz, or not the quiz, sorry, the Canvas quiz, which will be your assignment, which is really your homework and attendance. All right, so I'll figure that out as far as how we're going to fill in that blank, but if it's multiple choice, obviously you want to be aware of plus and minus, all those good things. I'll try to help set it up so that it makes it user-friendly for you. Okay, hope everybody's doing well. Stay safe, stay inside as much as possible. Just go outside and go for a run, whatever it is you need to do to stay active. And hope you guys are staying healthy right now. We'll talk to you soon.